Can I invite Dave to come and take the stage, please?
Thank you, conference, and greetings, everyone. It's good to see you all here. Some familiar faces and some new faces as well. So it's always good to meet like this and discuss these important issues. When I was being introduced, I thought I might be asked to do some poetry, but the agreement was that I'd do a lecture. But there's poetry in it as well. And while we talk about poetry, I'd really like us to it just occurred to me as I was getting started that here we are in a lovely church, a blessed place. I'd like to include some readings in my presentation. So I'm going to ask a few people, 3 people perhaps, to find some verses for me. I mean, if you didn't bring your Bible with you, I expect it's not a problem because you came into a conference on mental health, so you might wonder what the Bible have to do with it. But we are in a church, so you might find one. So there's somebody at the back there with one. Okay, 3 verses I'm interested in. Romans 12:2. That one talk about the renewal of the mind. No, the other one, I don't know where to find it, but it's come unto me, all your burden and heavy laden. You know that one? You can find it? Somebody can find it? Some of you have electronic devices as well. And then the other one, let this mind be in you that was also in Christ. You know that one? Let this mind, find it for me, please. While you're looking for it, let me just go straight into it by saying, this is one of the information. You may have heard it earlier today, but one of the World Health Organization tells us that 1 in 4 of us will suffer from a mental health problem. 1 in 4 of us, 25% of us will suffer from a mental health problem. It's probably right to say that everybody here will know somebody who is or has suffered from a mental health problem. You don't know somebody, well, it's you. It's you. No, I'm serious about that. I actually think the statistics given to us by the World Health Organization is incorrect, because my assertion is that it's not 1 in 4, it's actually 1 in 1, which means all of us. It really is all of us. And if you want to think of mental health as a spectrum, right, between, say, that window there and that window over there, you can imagine that over here you have total mental well-being. That means you have no issues mentally at all. Total, complete mental well-being. And over there, let's say you have total, complete mental breakdown. Nothing redeemable. Everything 100% chaos of the mind, and therefore of the body, really. Then I would like to suggest that nobody exists at these extremes. There's nobody who is totally broken that cannot be redeemed, and there's nobody completely in a state of complete mental well-being. So therefore, everything in between, this is where we all are. Most of us are somewhere in the middle, in the pulpit, right here in the pulpit. So since that is true, it means that really and truly what we're effectively doing with mental health is looking after each other. Simply looking after each other. It's like those in need looking after those in need as well. Just in different ways. I'd like to suggest that mental illness then is really a matter of nature and severity. So it's just a question, it's not whether or not somebody have a mental ill health or lack of 100% mental well-being. It's just a matter of the nature of your mental ill health and then the severity. Young girl, she was about 19, she was losing her child because they said her mind, she was mentally ill, so therefore she was not an appropriate person to look after her own baby. And that's a loss in itself. And she was just very calm and quiet. I always felt sorry for this young person in a psychiatric institution. And one day she said to me in front of the consultant psychiatrist, I think I'm suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Actually, sorry, what she said was, I think I'm suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome, is what she said. Slave syndrome. And the consultant pulled me aside and said, this is what we mean. She's schizophrenic. She doesn't know what he's talking about. There's nothing that exists like that. And he might have been right to come to that conclusion because he don't know about it. I didn't know about it. The weekend before I went to a conference where Dr. Joy DeLeary was talking about post-traumatic slave syndrome, which is our theory. Her theory was that those people who went through enslavement, their children, they experienced a trauma which their descendants now cannot embody this kind of trauma. And she was talking, and this young girl was picking up on that. She had heard it on the radio, she told me later, but the doctor didn't understand. It's just that she knew too much. It's not that she's ignorant. And sometimes we don't stop to question and wonder, what are people talking about? I stop and question, and I deal with poetry workshops, and some of those brilliant, beautiful poems have been written in institutions that they call mental health institutions. They're empowering. They're beautiful. But we have no time for people because they're talking gibberish. Is what we say. They're talking gibberish. They don't know. But listen. Sometimes we just don't even listen. You know, it's the same thing they say about people with an accent. I don't know what they're saying. They're speaking an accent. I don't understand that accent. But somebody's talking sense. Somebody's giving you the essence of your life. And you're like, no, I don't know what they're saying. They're from another country. Sometimes people don't know what somebody's saying because they're older. Or they can't be saying anything good. Or they're younger. They can't be saying anything good. They don't look like you. They can't be saying anything intelligible. Right? So, but somebody with a mental health problem, I believe that we should extend ourselves to listen and to have a conversation, enter dialogue. And then he said, does that make me crazy? And he said, well, possibly. Okay, maybe, possibly, yeah. He's not denying it. Okay, maybe I'm crazy. And I hope that you're having the time of your life, but think twice. That's my only advice. So the writer, being this person who's saying you're crazy, is giving you this advice. They say, I hope you're having the time of your life. And isn't this almost like an adage, like a proverb in a way? I hope you're having the time of your life. I hope so. But think twice. How many times have you think you're doing the right thing, you're on a good path, you're doing the right thing, you're making the right decisions, but then you should have thought twice because it wasn't right. So this is good advice coming from somebody so-called crazy. Come on, now, who do you think you are? Bless your soul. You really think you're in control. And I think I read this as the so-called crazy community looking at the so-called community who is not crazy and saying, you really think you're in control. You really think you're in control. But you're not. And we think, all of us think sometimes we're in control. We have our lives, it's all under control. But sometimes we're just one incident away from being in total loss of control. And we should consider that. We should consider how fragile life is, how wonderful a gift it is. And that actually this assumption that we're all powerful is not really a good assumption to make. We're only powerful as a collective, not as an individual. And this is what the song is reminding us of. And then they say, well, if you think all of that, I think you're crazy, just like me. You're crazy just like me. Remember the example I said before, that we're all in the spectrum? We're crazy just like each other. Imagine if we admitted that we're crazy just like each other. Just like everybody on the mental health ward, how differently would we act towards each other? You wouldn't have road rage for one, because if somebody does something that makes you outraged, you would just assume something must be going on. I hope they're all right. You know, not I'm going to catch up this person and come out and tell them what. You know what I mean? So we need to think like that. And then he says, my heroes had the heart to lose their life out on the limb. Who here has a hero who wouldn't do this? If you think about your hero right now, whoever that hero in your mind might be, that person is likely to be somebody who would lose their life out on a limb. That's why they became a hero. He's saying, I'm just like you. Your heroes are like my heroes. This is something to say that we're connected. And I remember thinking, I want to be like them, just like us. And, you know, in a way, this is very deep right here, because many of us have heroes, and we say, but they're heroes because they're so special. They're heroes, they're up here, they're put on statues that are high. I can't even reach it. But go to Parliament Square, and you'll see a different statue. You'll see the statue of Nelson Mandela, and of all the statues there, you can't reach them. You won't be able to George Lord, Winston Churchill and all these guys, Abraham Lincoln. It's too tall. They're put out of our reach. Nelson Mandela, however, was put right there. You can just hop, skip, and a jump, and you're up there with him. You're up there with him, you can hug him up, right? And the point of that is to say, I can be associated with my hero. This is somebody who is not just saying heroes are one in 1,000 people. It's me too. So they had the courage to want to be like them, not them, like them. In other words, I will do something heroic too. And oftentimes, when people set out to do that, you know, it is like, well, they're crazy. They're crazy. Ever since I was little, it looked like fun, and there's no coincidence I've come, and I can die when I'm done. This is somebody who has totally analyzed life and understand it. And then it just ends by saying, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you're crazy. Maybe we're all crazy. Well, probably. And this is something I think to consider. All right, so moving on then. Here we have this whole city and all of us just contained in it and all of us having this sort of issue that we should consider and take ownership for. And you have mental health looked at from different cultures. In the Spanish culture, you have Don Quixote, who's was an amazing book actually written by Cervantes. It was influenced by African literature, by the way. And here you have this guy who, you know, total mental breakdown. It's the most famous book to come out of España, which is a book where the hero is somebody who have a mental health breakdown, complete mental health breakdown. Britain, let's look at British culture and draw something from this. Actually, this is Victorian days. This is the 18th century. This is Dr. William Minor, who was in Broadmoor Hospital. I actually think that we have gone back in terms of how we treat people with mental health problems, because when he was in Broadmoor Hospital for committing a murder, he was given everything at his disposal, all the books. He loved books. So even though he was contained and detained behind walls, he was allowed to have his books, which he loved. And when the Oxford English Dictionary was being put together, they put an ad out so that anybody who wanted to define the words in the dictionary could do so. And he ended up being the single person who defined most of the words in that dictionary for one person to define. Organizations probably did more, but he defined as a sole person the most words in the Oxford Dictionary. At one point, Oxford thought that Broadmoor was an estate where a rich man lived. They didn't know it was a mental health hospital. So my point is, there are some people in society who have done some things. Now, I'm not going to say that there aren't some people who maybe need to be protected themselves from us, from society, but also society needs to be protected from them, right? Who need to be in an institution. But it doesn't mean he needed to be in an institution. But it doesn't mean that he can't be effective for society. And nowadays you hear the Daily Mail and all these papers and all these tabloids talking about, oh, they're getting all these wonderful things. They're getting workshops in sewing and creativity and all these things, for example. Well, hold on a second. If somebody's in prison and they've done something very disturbing and they're going to come back out and live in your community, don't you want them to have something beautiful in their lives so that some of their humanity is going to be restored so they can come back out? Such is our society. We're so selfish and unfeeling towards people with mental health problems. But back 150 years ago, they actually allowed people to engage their passion. If it's something that they liked, like painting, Richard Dadd, for example, he was allowed to continue painting in Broadmoor. He became one of the greatest and most influential painters in Europe. And this is the thing. This is the thing. When we're treating people, we need to treat them as a whole person. Somebody has one episode or one thing, and they need to just be locked away, and they're totally useful and they're locked down. That's not true. There's still a person still able to contribute to society as Minor did. Let's look at the Jamaican example. Dancehall Queen. This film, I would encourage you to see it because it examines mental health as well. And here's a scene where the actor, one of the most brilliant actors in my view, the guy on the extreme left, Paul Campbell, who is playing the role priest in this film, and he kills this guy here, this murder, and the lady is screaming in the background. This is a traumatic situation. And his best friend, the guy who is murdered, his best friend over there, witnesses it, and so he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, and he ends up really mentally ill in the film. And the way he's treated in the film is, people joke about his situation and so on, but his sister take him back to the country, and he stays with his grandparents, and he eats food and go for walks by the river and so on and so forth, and he gets rehabilitated. And that's a Jamaican model. In some Jamaican communities, you will actually find that some psychotherapists will actually have a house up in the hills where people can have a great view and get good food, and people in the community are told to look out for them and to treat them well and not to, disparage them in any way and so on. So you have this kind of model taking place there. And so there he is in the country, recovering. And there he is. I mean, the trauma is revisited when priest approaches him and say, if you talk to the police, you're a dead man, kind of thing. So this is, as I did say I wanted to come to We Wear the Mask by Paul Laurence Dunbar, which is a poem I'd like us to share, to introduce to us, but not just a poem, but Paul Laurence Dunbar as a bit of a homework, because every conference should have takeaway assignments. One of the takeaway assignments I would like you to do is go and look at the poetry and the work of Paul Laurence Dunbar, who was an African-American poet who wrote, these are the time when he was living in, 1872 to 1906, very short life, but wrote so many beautiful, lovely poems. For example, Life. For example, Sympathy, where Maya Angelou got her line, I know why the cage birds sing. That comes from his poetry. So, We Wear the Mask is a very powerful poem, and I just put a mask up there to show that mask, it looks strong, it looks powerful, and it's probably one of the most famous images that comes out of African culture, Nubian culture, the mask of Tutankhamun. And it looks powerful and all, conquering and so on. But this was a little boy who would probably running up and down the place, drop and cut his knee, run and cry to mommy and all of these kind of things. This was a child, and sometimes all we see is the mask. And sometimes people just project the mask, but there's something going on behind the mask, and I think by examining what's going on behind the mask, we can improve our mental well-being. So, so the question is, what is behind the mask? I mean, I was in a school one day, and I was working with some students, and they took a young girl to me and said, can she sit in your session for the day? I said, fine, no problem. She can sit in the session. She sat in the session, and she asked for work to be done, and she just got on with her work, and she was as cheerful as anything. She just sat quietly and got on with her work. And I thought, wow, that was nice. I wondered, she doesn't sound like a child who was excluded or anything. Wonder why she was sitting there. So as I was going, the teachers shared with me the reason why she was there. She was there because the week before, not months before, not year before, the week before, she was, I would just say gang raped is how the best way to put it, by some boys, right? From another school or something, and they filmed it, and they shared this tape around, this sex tape going around, and so on. And so she was teased in the class, and so she was being mocked, and she was treated badly by people. Oh, I saw the tape, you this and that, calling names, and so on and so forth. And from going through that kind of level of trauma, and to be sitting in a class quietly, not creating any trouble, not giving any sign, I was so shocked that that is what she had been through. And that was her behavior. She was completely wearing this mask. And you wonder, I wonder to this, what happened to her? What kind of counseling she may have got? But anyway, we wear the mask. We continue to wear the mask. Paul Laurence Dunbar reminds us, we wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile with torn and bleeding hearts. What do we do? With a torn and bleeding heart, right? What do you expect with people from a torn and bleeding heart? What? Well, we smile. We smile. And mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? No, let them only see us while we wear the mask. In other words, let the world dream otherwise, we wear the mask. And the poem ends emphatically, we continue, we wear the mask. I'm suggesting that in wearing this mask, which we all sometimes feel we must do, but in the wearing of this mask, sometimes we wonder, wouldn't it be lovely to just have a safe place where we can take this mask off? But alas, we don't. We don't. Not in our society. Not in our society at all, because the UK studies shows us that stigma and discrimination associated with mental health problems far, far outweighs the pain from the actual symptoms of the problem. So in other words, if somebody have a mental health problems, it comes with some symptoms, and that causes pain and discomfort and all sorts. right? But that is nothing compared to what they experience in terms of stigmatization and discrimination. Now, I have to put it to us, since it is that pain is worse than the symptoms itself, then we as a society are in a better position than even medics to alleviate mental health problems. Because it's us that's responsible for stigmatization and discrimination. All we need to do is stop. One of our biggest cures for mental health is just to stop. Stop discriminating, stop stigmatizing, and to start showing comfort. Start showing a sense of understanding and sympathy and so on. So we don't have time to go through the RAICS progress, but the last part of the RAICS progress kind of begin to show the conditions of hospitals back in the time and so on, where people just laughed at people. This just underscores the point of stigma, where people were just laughed at in institutions, completely just jeered, and people would pay money, because there was no TV at the time, and so on. So people would pay money to even come in and beat people with mental health problems and see how they reacted and laugh and jeer at them. And this was the aristocracy as well. You see those ladies in the background, just kind of making fun of the people in mental health institutions. So the recommendations is, I think somebody mentioned before, Good Samaritan is about looking out for people who are in need. Light and heat, warm, faith and beauty, unconditional, positive regard, cultural exposure, and participation. These are some recommendations in terms of how we need to work one with another and so on, recognizing each other's beauty, having an unconditional positive regard for people. An unconditional positive regard, no matter how somebody look or appear, or smell even, or just turn up. It's just a positive. You cannot overestimate the power of a positive regard, of a hug, of a cup of tea offered to somebody, right? Just regarding somebody positively because of their humanity, because they're fearfully and wonderfully made. It's just so important. And I'll just leave you with some pictures. Head to head, shoulder to shoulder. This has been my work and so on, and including in my work, it's just working with all groups of people, including First Lady Michelle Obama, you know what I mean? I put that up there. I put that up there because, well, it's just bragging rights, it's all it is. It's just to say we need to connect one with another, all of us, at every level of society, bringing people together and so on in the mix and so on. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your lecture. I think I went over my time. Thank you.